Axum Tefera, and I am Associate Director of the Clean Cooling Collaborative at ClimateWorks Foundation. And we are focused on advancing efficient climate-friendly cooling and making sure those who need cooling and are at risk from extreme heat have access to it. So we have a great set of speakers today to discuss the opportunities to catalyze development of sustainable cold chain solutions, and really from an accessibility and utilization standpoint. And we're here to focus on rural areas and emerging markets. So our speakers will give you some insights as to how scalable business models and financing can be tools for helping to accelerate development. So we do want to start off very quickly by showing you an intro video that goes about the challenges of food loss and waste through the lens of an SME called Farm to Feed in Kenya. So let's show that very quickly.
The problem of food loss and waste in Kenya really came to our attention when we started off as a COVID relief emergency effort at the height of the pandemic. A lot of food was going to waste and being lost on farms. So we rescued the produce from farmers and we delivered it to those most affected by the pandemic. My name is Zara Benosa and I am Farm to Feed's lead on partnerships and fundraising. The gravity of the problem is rather large and quite serious. Overall, in sub-Saharan Africa, nearly 50% of fruits and vegetables never even make it to the consumer. Kenya basically loses up to $1.5 billion worth of food in terms of post-harvest losses. All of this loss and waste happening at a time when there is huge incidences of hunger and food insecurity. 26% of Kenyan children are stunted. So it's a really grave problem that Farm to Feed has developed a scalable solution to address. Farm to Feed's solution tackles food loss and food waste by creating a market for imperfect and surplus produce. So this allows more nutritious food to be affordable and available. It allows farmers to earn additional income for food that would have been written off as a loss. Also, for farmers, mostly whom are women, this builds their resilience. Thirdly, this helps tackle climate change. If you want to tackle climate change, tackle food loss. 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from food loss and food waste.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Craig Hansen, Managing Director of World Resources Institute, to help us frame the opportunities and challenges for emerging markets.
Great, good afternoon, everyone. How many people here actually work on food loss and waste in your day job? Okay, this is a quite knowledgeable crowd here, so I'll just keep it going right on the top here. So we all know the numbers. We even heard some stories here from Kenya in terms of the on-farm and near-farm food losses during COVID here. Now, cold chains, getting cold chains into the system is a potential solution for tackling on-farm and near-farm food losses, but you know, there's some challenges in getting cold chains going. One is you want to make sure they're low carbon, right? Because you just want cold chains out there and then exacerbating the challenges that we've had in the global north with high energy, non-carbon GHGs, et cetera, associated with cold chains. We're looking at low carbon cold chains. Secondly, there's the issue about finance, right? We've all heard, well, a lot of the conversation around this entire event is a bit about financing. But I'd also say the issue is less, there's no money out there. I think there's money out there. The issue is there's not enough investable projects, right, for that money to flow to, right? And that might be at the heart, or one of the hearts of the challenges we're facing, and we're going to hear some folks talk about that after I speak. So it's not just finance per se, but it's places, good investable projects for the finance to go. Thirdly is the markets. It's one thing to have cold storage, but then, where are those farmers with all those carrots you just saw? Where's it going to go, right? If there's no access to some type of market, right, you just stored stuff and got it cold to then have it be lost again, right? So you need access to markets. And finally is knowledge and technology, right? There's low carbon technologies that are coming up and new. Some are old, but still relevant. but also there's the know-how that's needed to actually make it work. How do you use the technology? How do you use the financing to finance the technology, et cetera? Right? So there's a knowledge gap. So what this session today is about is a new effort, cleverly called Cool Move. Emphasis on cool, but move is about moving the market, moving the money, getting progress and change made, which brings together a number of players, and I think our next speakers will talk about who they are, to really think about how do we advance low carbon cold storage, starting off on the continent of Africa, to really help drive home, address a number of problems the world faces today. One is food security, right? We all know how high the prices are right now, looking at the FAO food index. COVID, right, has also exacerbated the issue of food security for people. So there's a food security issue. There's also a climate security issue, right? Both near term and long term. So if Cool Move is successful, the idea is that it would actually help parts of Africa where actually it operates to help tackle both of those crises, both of those challenges all at the same time. And kind of the core of it is to bring together the solutions providers, the technology providers, the potential financiers, as well as the off-takers, to work in specific locations, specific communities, to get specific deals done that drive basically that next generation of low carbon cold storage to help support food chains in Africa and help drive down food losses, increase farmer income, farmer access to markets, and build food security. It's innovative in that it only works because the players you bring together, right? It's not just about having a technology. It's also about having the finance, but also engaging the communities. And part of the vision here is to get this going and be working in about 20 different value chains over the next 5 years, right? And what they'd like to do is, in the places where they work, they'd like to double the amount of low-carbon cold chains that are available 5 years from now, and then double it again 5 years after that. So that's kind of the ambition here of this. But this is really, though, about bringing low-carbon cold chains as a solution to a market that really, really needs it. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion because you're going to have some leading thinkers, kind of the founders of this movement here, talking about their vision, the challenges to be overcome, and how they're going to do it. I just want to end by saying that, it's fitting that we're doing this at a climate conference. You could do it at a World Food Summit or whatever, but, at the end of the day, this is about finding solutions where the technology and what you're solving for, reducing food losses, actually help with the climate. So with that, I will turn things back to our moderator. The floor is yours.
Thank you for that framing, Craig. Very much appreciate it. And we, with the raise of hands, have seen that we have quite a few practitioners, experts in the field in the room. So we're going to try to make this interactive and create space for you all to also engage with our speakers in a bit. But I do want to move us on to just showing some real-world cold chain solutions that are out there and looking at what local companies are doing to tackle the challenge of food loss and lack of good nutrition and all of that. So we have some nice examples where cold chain should be integrated, and we want to look at especially where there's perishable food like fruits, vegetable, fish. We know that the challenge is to matchmake and integrate the right type of facility with the appropriate need. And next to that, we need to simultaneously look at how do we make sure that these technologies, solutions are sustainable and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So one good example of a low-carbon cold chain storage solution is the EcoFrost system. And this is developed by a company called EcoZen. So we want to play a quick video for you.
EcoFrost is a solar-powered cold room. It does not use batteries for storing energy. We have built an ice core at the heart of the product, which is nothing but liquid converting into a kind of ice. The whole unit is backed up by a very strong AI at the core of the product. So these algorithms are running inside the controls and on the server as well on the cloud, which ensure that the unit's performance is happening to the best possible extent.
Blue Sky Hubs, we are a farm that is growing and exporting fresh herbs all over the world. Basically, all the herbs are very sensitive to temperatures. There are herbs that you'll store at 2 to 4 degrees, and there are herbs that you'll store at 10 to 12 degrees. If you miss out the temperatures by a margin of 2 degrees or more, then you end up losing the entire harvest. All the inputs, the chemicals, the fertilizers, the labor input comes at a negative number. The solar cold room came at a good time when we had started harvesting basil, and we get better shelf life using the EcoFrost cold room than storing it to the pack house temperature.
The AI, the solar energy generation, power conversion, so all of it, when you put them together, when you build the hardware and the software together, that is what makes it more efficient, makes it more reliable, and makes it more beautiful. More power to the farmer.
So as you've seen, Ecozen has successfully collaborated with many SMEs in Kenya. And one SME called SocoFresh offers farm-level cold storage as a service and a digital market linkage platform that helps to seamlessly integrate small and medium-scale farmers to formal value chains. So we want to show you that also.
I'm Arpana Philip. I am the COO of SocoFresh. SocoFresh is a social enterprise that provides farmers with access to cold storage services. Smallholder farmers actually bear the direct consequences or the brunt of climate change. There is growing food insecurity. In Kenya and in East Africa, and actually in Sub-Saharan Africa, about 40 to 50% of all fresh fruit and vegetables are lost post-harvest. And a lot of the reasons why we have post-harvest loss is lack of supply chain infrastructure from farm gate to markets. A lot of these cold storages are available for exporters near the airport, not really near the farms. And so what SocoFresh does is bring that innovation to the farms. And as you see, we're sitting here, we're very close to the farms. We're walking distance from some of our farmer clients.
I'm Frederick Mutuli. It's my home. My shamba hii nalima avocado na hii ingine macadamia. In SocoFresh, they say it is good. So if they put the avocado for 5 minutes, the money is in my phone. They give me the money just the right time for 5 minutes. Anatuma kwa simu. Sasa kusikia hawa na wako na 65, mimi nikahama huko nikaingia kwa soko. Sasa mimi napea huyu ndio nasema nakuja siku gani na ndio nawekea yeye.
Wonderful. So I'd like to now invite our panelists up to the stage, please. I think we do not have the Deputy Director General of Rwanda with us. Right, so please come on stage. We have Kevin Fay, Executive Director of the Alliance for Responsible CFC Policy and Executive Director of the Global Food Cold Chain Council. We have Leke Verhofstadt, Business Development Manager at the Global Food and Energy Networks team at Rabobank, also host of this session. And we have Christopher Brett, Lead Agribusiness Specialist at World Bank. Great. So I want to start on this topic of how to create an enabling environment for cold chain to thrive. So Like, if I might start with you. We often hear that development in rural markets is not possible because there's a lack of finance. So from a commercial bank perspective, how do you think about this issue?
Thank you, Exim. Indeed, we are a commercial bank. We are a food and agricultural bank, to be precise. And indeed, we hear many times that development is not really possible because of the lack of finance. And in a way, that's true, but it's not because of the lack of money out there. It's actually what Craig already mentioned. There is a lot of money out there. The problem is that there are no bankable projects. For an SME or a company to be bankable, you need scalable and viable business models. And if there's a viable and scalable business model available, then a bank will finance it. We know that when you start a company or you want to transform into more sustainable practices, you need to go through what we used to call the valley of death, what we now rather call the valley of transition. So we do know as commercial banks that SMEs deal with that. But what we also see is that there is a huge lack of bankable projects in Africa. Therefore, this initiative is also very much focused on developing the right business models and not only for blended finance or other financial solutions, because once there are viable business models, the financing will come.
Thank you, Leike. Now I want to turn a bit to data. So what is the importance of data in getting financing for cold chain? And Kevin, could you speak to why a database is useful for cold chain in a particular country?
Thank you, Axum. Lika just touched on it a little bit in that the tough part of trying to get financing for a project is what's the basis for you assessing whether you've got a viable project or not. The Global Food Cold Chain Council has been working for the last several years to develop a data gathering program with developing countries and working with the Montreal Protocol Secretariat to identify the state of the cold chain in a particular country. And people first say, well, wait a minute. Well, what's the cold chain? Well, it's not just cold storage. It's trucks, it's processing, it's home refrigeration, it's commercial retail refrigeration, and the cold chain is quite diverse. And yet we also know that the cold chain in many countries is not nearly as developed as it is, for example, say in some of the developed countries. And so it's important that you get an understanding of that by gathering the data to identify what kind of cold chain do you have, number one. Number two, to link it to what is your agriculture system in your country, so that you make sure you're identifying, if you're going to identify sustainable technologies to help improve food loss and waste and help improve productivity, you know what the products are that agriculture system is producing. It will help you then provide quantification for the environmental and economic benefits, and also helps create confidence for financial institutions on the value of a project or the risk of the investment. And so it's absolutely critical that you start with a data gathering initiative that helps to know where you're starting from and where you're trying to get to.
Thank you. I want to turn to Chris for a moment. Even though you're virtual, we're happy to have you here. Could you talk about what you see as the role of MDBs and DFIs to enable finance to create sustainable and resilient cold chain approaches?
No, thank you very much. And apologies, of course, I'm not there in person, but it's so great I can connect. And just to say, this is my fourth session in COP, sitting here working from the World Bank in Rome. So we are connected globally. I really want to say a special thanks to the invitation for this, because you're bringing all the core partners together. I mean, this cool move that Craig and the team have referred to is bringing FAO, Rabo, IFC as core partners together with other partners, of course, the clients of this, as well as ESMAP, one of the bank initiatives, which is looking at energy sector management and assistance programs as well. And what I'm trying to say here, when it comes to the business model you've heard about a lot, there's been a terrifically long journey here. You know, the MDBs, the World Bank Group, where we lend to the public sector, to the bank, and the IFC lends to the private sector. These are important areas to appreciate that when it comes to our role, we have to prepare the clients for investment. This talk about the business plan is so relevant, but what are we doing to actually develop that business plan. So just very, very briefly, the World Bank at the moment in the agriculture and food global practice where I sit, our portfolio is $24 billion of lending to governments. That's a significant amount of money, of which 45% is going directly into value chains. So what does that mean? It's going into dairy, it's going to fruits and vegetables, it's going into aquaculture, it's going to all these value chains, which are very, very reliant on infrastructure, the transport systems, the refrigeration systems, the whole package to get it to that producer. So what we're looking at is the cool move is to develop this nexus of technology, finance, innovation in terms of power, off-grid power systems that we're looking at and investing in, so we can reduce the cost to the producers and the off-takers. By reducing the cost, you make it more robust for banks to look at. But also a lot of work going on in developing the producers into the formal farmer producer organizations. We've got to build them into collective partners that can participate in commercial value chains. And the word commercial is very strong here, because when you start talking about being commercial, then you are looking at how you produce, how you sell, etc. And I think for me, what I'm trying to stress here is that the bank at the moment, the World Bank, working with partners on how we build a fund to lend to cold chain systems. And I'm going to use the word cold or cool. Cool is more about where we do not have refrigeration systems, which are high power units, high carbon units. What we're looking at is basically systems which can work off-grid power systems, hub and spoke systems, communities being able to store their products to hold them for a day or two as they aggregate and prepare for market. And then when they go to the market, they can go into more sophisticated cold chain systems, which can be held for the wholesale markets or for export. So it's a hub and spoke system. So we're trying to work out how do we build a fund that de-risks local banks or other partners like Rabo and IFC on how they can come together and then start investing in the clients. And I think this is the important thing. Is the client the producer, or is the client the off-taker? I would argue in more cases the off-taker is critical, because they're the ones that are aggregating and own the product and have to take it to the market. The farmers are quite, I'm not saying they shouldn't be getting value addition, but we need to get this product system moving, prove the models, and then see how we can build the producer SMEs to come into more asset development, asset management. I can say a lot. I'm going to stop there, but look forward to the next questions. Back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. So we've heard a bit about the importance of business development. So I'd love for you to help unpack that from the Rabobank perspective. Why is it important?
Sorry, why?
Business development.
Yes, well, it's actually not only business development what is important, as everyone here mentioned. The initiative is actually based on creating the perfect enabling environment for SMEs in those countries to flourish. Which means, yes, we should look at financial solutions, we should look at business development, of course. Data is an extremely important part, not only for banks to look at risks, but also think about utilization rates. So you see a lot of cold storages in Africa that are already there, but they are half filled, and not even throughout the year, for a few months a year. And if you think of that can never be a good business model. So we need those figures on utilization rates. We need to know how many carbon we can reduce. So there's much more to it. And the fourth thing that has not been mentioned yet is the role of the government. And that's also extremely important. So the government engagement to create the right policies, the right regulations, but also the right infrastructure is extremely, extremely important. It's not only business development, it's more than that. And we are definitely looking at the entire enabling environment for those SMEs.
Thank you. Wonderful. I have more questions, but I do want to open it up and we can do some lively discussion. So please feel free to raise your hand, stand up, introduce yourselves, and bring some questions in.
Yeah, hi, my name is Gregory Spira. I'm with Care Canada. And this is really interesting, and I think the progress in the technology is really a step forward towards what we've all been wanting. I'm just wondering, and respectfully challenging, that the aggregators might not be the only or the best destination for these. We know that private sector will crowd in where there's an opportunity. Where they are not crowding in is at the local farm level, especially in rural areas where women smallholder farmers are most active. And so those are places, we're assuming that those are places that just are beyond hope for cold storage. I disagree, because we're looking at it as not profitable because there is no value addition there, and it's too difficult to reach. But if you put transformation and cold storage together, then you can reach that last mile, so to speak, and really touch the smallholder farmers, especially women who are out there. So my question is, how can we take that missing middle and the next link and actually get it to reach the smallholder farmers? Thank you.
Let me touch base on that, and actually we think of it as the first mile, not the last mile. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to say there's a whole transition underway in the air conditioning and refrigeration industry towards technologies that rely on low GWP refrigerants, number one. Number two, that are either very energy efficient or ultimately will be able to rely on renewable energy. Well, we think that's ideally situated for those people in the first mile. Now, that doesn't mean that the technology is specifically there for that use or for that project immediately, but it is, and it will take some education for that first mile farm holder to understand the value and the need to utilize some sort of cooling technology to benefit them. And that needs to be part of the program. But from a technology standpoint, that's why you want to do your data gathering to understand and compare that against the agriculture system to understand what it is you're cooling, what's the benefit of it. It prolongs the market and it reduces your spoilage, and ultimately is helpful from both a financial and quality of life standpoint. We'll talk about, I don't know when we're showing the Somali fisheries video, but I'll talk to you about the benefits we saw on something that is, let me just say, very low technology in terms of complication with a very high payout in terms of benefits. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Just one addition that I want to make is, you said the private sector will invest once there's an opportunity, and I think the challenge here is to prove that there is an opportunity, and that's why we are starting this initiative, by gathering the right data, modeling the right business cases, and finding the right financial solutions, and then it will accelerate. So that's what I have to add.
So we do want to bring in real-world examples to this conversation, and we'll open it up again, but you mentioned the Somalia video here. And so when it comes to both cooling as well as nutrition, there's aquaculture. We want to show a bit about a fishery project in Somalia, where they're working on reducing food loss, increasing profit, and enhancing the resilience of communities, all in an integrated fashion. So let's show that.
maanta oo 29 bisha Oktoobar ah waxaan halka u joognaa insha Allah taala sida arkayseen xariga laga jaray baraf dhaliyaha degmada Bandarbayla oo runtii aan isleenahay wax badan buu ka qabanayaa ama u tarayaa guud ahaan dadka kalluumaysatada ee ku nool degmada. Mashruucan waxaan ku soo bilownay in kalluumaysatada degmada Bandarbayla ay hesho baraf dhaliye ka caawinaya markii ay aadaan badda, sababtoo ah qofku hadaanu baraf wadan dee iska dareemi kartaan kalluunkii uu ka khaayisayaa, waqti badan ma joogi karo baddii, taasoo caqabad weyn runtii ku ahayd guud ahaan kalluumaysatada. Baraf dhaliyahani waa 3 tan ayuu soo saari karaa maalintii wuxuuna awood u leeyahay inuu siiyo kalluun ku filan degmada Bandarbayga kalluumaysatada ku nool.
maanta run ahaantii waxaa halkan ku daahfuraynaa barafdhalihii ugu horreeyey iyadoo hadda ka horna tallaagadii iyo barnaamij kale la keenay oo tallaagada dhulka ajiifka ay hay'addu keentay runtiina wasaaraddu iyo hay'adda Secure Fishery iyo hay'adaha kaleba Bandarbayla waxay ku talagaleen inay noqoto muunadii koowaad loo soo yimaado halkan ka bacdina la arko qaabka maamul wanaag ay u shaqaynayaan.
waxaan qiyaasaynaa in barafdhaliyahani uu hoos u dhigi doono
Let me add to that. This was actually our first pilot project for Global Food Cold Chain Council, and that 3-ton ice maker was a $50,000 investment. As you saw, it will reduce their fish spoilage by 70%. They were currently, their overall fish spoilage is like 30%. This will take it down to 8. Number one, it will increase sales annually for the fishermen in Bandarbayla, of which there are about 1,000 fishermen in the co-op. It will increase annual fish sales revenue by $2.5 million. And it will also sell another $200,000 annually just selling ice. So that was a $50,000 investment. That's the kind of I'll call it low tech. It's still sophisticated for what they had, but the kind of information that a commercial lender is going to look at. They have a co-op that lets them to do business with. They can show fabulous returns, and we're already in negotiation with them on how to expand this to other fishing communities in the area and to add refrigerated trucks to the system so that they can also expand the reach from that first mile to the last mile and expand the distribution there.
Wonderful. So I do want to turn us back to the EcoZone video. We saw solar-powered storage. How do we make sure that cold chain expansion is happening in a sustainable way using sustainable technology solutions? And I offer that to all of you.
Maybe start with Chris. You
Yes.
want to go first?
Yeah. Well, let me come in. I mean, in my introduction, I explained about the portfolio that we have with lending to government. So let's really talk about this very practically. We've been doing very large-scale initiatives and investments around Kenya. We all know that Kenya has got a lot of innovation around ag tech, which of course helps to build this platform of connectivity between the producers, right down to the smallholders, through to the markets. We did a program where we built a whole series now of cooperatives, farmer cooperatives or farmer producer organizations. Cooperatives is a word that's used in some countries and not in others. But in Kenya, we look at the FBOs, the farmer business organizations or producer organizations. They come together now based around dairy value chains and around the fruit value chains in particular. And what we've done now is we've just launched a new program with the government. It's a $250 million investment called the National Agricultural Value Chain Program. And that program is now looking at how to integrate logistics, cold chain systems and invest in them at the community level. So this is where the World Bank is offering key areas of support. And we talk about finance and we talk about policy quite rightly, with the banks very much involved. But what we also need to talk about here is the important role of technical assistance. It's not just about having the asset, it's about really ensuring that asset is used and is utilized in a correct manner. So technical assistance is an interesting thing. If you look at the kind of numbers which are required, if you build a fund for investment, say of $10 million, you need to have anything between $1.5 to $2 million of that investment on technical assistance, up to 20% to make the system work. And I think this is an area where there's been a huge amount of failure in the past. We build assets and expect those assets to be operational, but they're not operational, not just because of the knowledge and know-how, it's just that the business, the economics around managing that, how crops go in the asset and come out is a big challenge. And just to sort of the final point I'll make is that we've now got a lot of assets being built around mobility, like containers, which have been developed into cool chain systems with strong fans and solar panels. And they can be moved around the communities, they can be used a lot more than just that 20%, 30% per year as they get used across different value chains. So there's a lot of things happening in this space which is transitioning and changing. Because when we talk about all this waste, the biggest challenge is really, if we talk about these millions and millions of dollars of waste, why are we challenged to invest in this infrastructure? It seems to be, quite frankly, a bit of a no-brainer that we go forward and get this work done. So we've given you an example of Kenya. The last one, of course, is we're working with Rwanda as well, and we've just agreed a value chain investment there as well, which we'll be looking at the really developing horticulture sector in Rwanda, domestic, regional, and export, and see how we can bring those assets there as well. So it's about technology, it's about the investment case, it's about technical assistance, it's about finance, it's about the enabling environment as well. Back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, on the sustainability part, which of course is extremely important, we call it low carbon cold chain. But I want to emphasize, and it's something I learned actually this COP. We all know that food loss and waste takes about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. But what I learned this COP is that the methane that food loss and waste actually emits is 30 times worse than carbon. So if we could cut food waste, then we have an enormous impact on climate. And if we can then use these off-grid, solar-powered, low-carbon cold chains, then I think sustainability is not even a subject anymore. It's just a given. And then maybe you can elaborate on the report that you...
Let me make two comments. First of all, when we were first organized, we announced the Global Food Cold Chain Council in 2014. It really was to focus on the transition to low GWP refrigerants within the industry. But as we got into it, we learned and found out that the environmental opportunity and the benefit was far greater to focus on beyond the transition to low GWP technologies, but to also focus on the benefits of reducing food loss and waste. And so now the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendment, which has just been ratified, assures the transition globally. That's saving a half a degree warming between now and 2100 to lead the industry. The next big step is that renewable energy component of it to the technology. But the other thing that we mentioned is part of what Chris just talked about, and the other leg of the stool for this is also helping to develop the technical assistance, and by that, in this area, we talk about refrigerant management and service so that the equipment that you provide and get out there actually continues to operate. And so it creates jobs for the local community, but it also assures the high efficient operation of the technology that they're acquiring, and making sure that because there's too many stories about, you put some nice piece of equipment in a community, but it breaks down, and so then it sits there for 6 months and doesn't get used. So that is a challenge to the industry around the globe, not just in a developing country, to have a highly focused and trained refrigerant service and management technology, and another opportunity for us there as part of the business assessment that will be done by the financial institutions as to whether they want to lend to that.
That's a great way to round out and explain the benefits to climate and nutrition, food access, increased income, many, many benefits together. I do want to give someone a chance to offer one last question. Maybe we can fit into, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Selina Shadef from the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, and we are focusing on developing strategies to overcome market barriers to drive investments in climate change solutions. And we have one of our flagship projects is on called Your Virtual Cold Chain Assistant, which is basically where we implemented in India and now currently in Nigeria decentralized solar-powered cold storage in rural areas. And I was just wondering, so we're doing this based on a pay-per-use model, and if I understand correctly, this is also the case with you. that's my first question. And the second one is, how do you actually inform farmers to when to best pick up, let's say, crates or other products? And have you been able to integrate market intelligence into this? For instance, letting them know when to best pick up the crops when the market prices are highest. Because we've developed an app called Cultivate, which we are basically using to bridge small-scale farmers with operators, and whereby we let them know when to best pick up the crates. And we're currently developing or trying to develop the integration of market intelligence to also look into how to inform them when to pick up best prices. But this is a bit of a challenge depending on the countries where you look at and the data availability, etc. So it would be great to just hear from your experience. Thank you.
Yeah, a quick response from my side. It's not that we have one project. It's not. That's actually not the case. What we are aiming with the Cool Move is that we connect the dots in the enabling environment. So with that enabling environment, we can support all kinds of business models as long as they're scalable and viable. And we want to collect the data on national level, not only on SME level. So it can be everything. So we are in everything. Like the farm to feed you saw in the very start, that could be, it's a totally different business model, but that could be a scalable and viable business model as well. So what we are aiming is actually creating that perfect enabling environment with the right regulations, policies, infrastructure, the right data, the right financial solutions, and the right business models. That's what we are aiming at. So maybe...
And let me add, the training is absolutely critical. And I've been involved with some other initiatives under the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, like Global Clean Cook Stoves. And so the technology you can come up with, but you have some cultural issues you have to also get over in terms of educating the farm community of when's the right time to pick, why you would rely on cold storage, and the benefits of that. And that needs to be a component of this kind of a program as well.
Chris, do you want to add anything?
No, just basically, I know we're running out of time. Just to say that there are incredibly good new models that are working. I just like to say to the group there, do look at Trigger Foods in Kenya. Trigger Foods has been a client of IFC and had quite a lot of support through advisory, and they've really worked hard on their business, and they have developed these strong linkages between producers, not just to the market, but to actually the street sellers in Nairobi and those areas. So they deliver these goods every day on time to the whole range of the market sector. It's not exclusive to supermarket. It's out there giving fresh produce to the community centres as well. So just to say, great examples, and really look forward to working with everyone here going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I know... Oh, yes. We've only been able to scratch the surface in this short session, so I hope you'll follow up with all of our speakers with questions and discussion. But I want to thank Rabobank first and all of the speakers today for kicking off a rich discussion, and there's plenty more to do in this space. But we do want to end with just showing a case study of Carrier doing some cold chain work in India. We've heard some examples in East Africa already. But Cool Move is looking to expand and make sure cold chain can grow in all continents. And so here's one highlight very quickly.
Kino is a relatively new member of the citrus family. This fruit is rich in mineral and vitamins and is gaining popularity. Abohar is a small town in the state of Punjab in North India. It is one of the few places in the world suited to grow kinos. In the current process, after harvesting during winter season, the fruit is cleaned, waxed, sorted, and packed. The kinos are then sent to the markets, usually by open trucks. As a consequence, a high share of the kino is wasted during the hot season. It does not reach all the potential markets in India and abroad. Carrier decided to work with the National Center for Cold Chain Development India to conduct a pilot project to extend the holding life of the fruit so that it can reach Bangalore and South India during the hot season. With this purpose, Carrier identified Balaji Kinos, one of the largest aggregator in the region, to set up a cold chain.
ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਪ੍ਰੀ ਕੂਲਿੰਗ ਸਾਡੇ ਏਰੀਆ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੈਰੀਅਰ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੀ ਕੂਲਿੰਗ ਵਾਇਆ। ਫਿਰ ਕੈਰੀਅਰ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟਰੱਕ ਮੰਗਾਏ ਉਹ ਬੰਗਲੌਰ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ, ਕੇਰਲਾ ਦੀ ਮੰਡੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਗਿਆ, ਚੇਨਈ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ, ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਰਸ਼ੀਆ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ, ਦੁਬਈ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ, ਔਰ ਬੰਗਲਾਦੇਸ਼ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਭੇਜਿਆ।
Balaji added Carrier cold chain solutions at the two key steps of the cold chain, preconditioning and connecting. The cold chain not only enables the consumers in the south of India to enjoy freshly squeezed quinoa juice, but it also helps in reducing wastage together with the associated carbon emissions while enhancing the farmer's income. The positive outcome of the field study has sparked interest in the region, with several farmers interested in implementing the Carrier cold chain solutions.
And thank you all for joining us today, and I want to give an applause to Craig, Laike, Chris, and Kevin. We appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye.